Moving on to the next story, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about what's happening here with Donald Trump's numbers and this issue with Kamala Harris contributing to that in some way, shape, or form. The first question I want to ask you when we get into the story is, Kamala Harris, in my opinion, is a weak candidate. Is it possible that Kamala Harris was set up to fail? And I'll show you what I mean by that. We're going to start with the response of Kamala Harris CNN town hall. And I'm starting with this for a reason, because this is going to take us into the new data about Donald Trump, his increase with Black men and Latino men. Listen to this.
When she doesn't want to answer a question, her habit is to kind of go to word salad city. And she did that on a couple of answers. One was on Israel. Anderson asked a direct question, would you be stronger on Israel than Trump? And there was a 7-minute answer, but none of it related to the question he was asking.
She doesn't have to be flawless, but she has to give you something. I mean, she's like a true double threat. You know, she's terrible on her feet when she gets unexpected questions. And simultaneously, she can't even answer the expected questions. It's nothing, nothing, nothing. You'd think she'd be prepared to do this by now. You know, what's a mistake you've made? Nothing. What's a weakness you have? Nothing. What's the first law you want to pass? Nothing. What's a policy difference between you and Joe Biden? Nothing. Over and over and over. Empty, empty, empty. If she were an animal, she'd be a duck-billed platitude. But look, it's a total word salad.
Focused a lot more on Donald Trump, I think it's fair to say, than she did on many specifics in terms of what she would do as president. But she did go into some of her plans for small businesses.
Well, I'll just tell you what I'm hearing from people who I have been talking to, and that is that if her goal was to close the deal, they're not sure she did that. And, you know, some people have asked, is she being held to a different standard? Maybe, but that's maybe the world that she's living in. And on the question of who she is, people are understanding that a little bit more. But what she will do, the question about her legislative priorities, name one, there wasn't one.
I think that the word salad stuff gets on my nerves. I think that some of the evasions are not necessary. But when she's talking about trying to get you a house, I believe her.
Mm-hmm. Kamala Harris participated in a one-person debate last night, and she lost. Okay, she was asked direct questions, and she provided very circular answers. My colleagues Van Jones and David Axelrod and others noted that, you know, she provided word salad answers. And, you know, Anderson would ask her specifically direct questions, and she didn't provide an answer to them. When asked, Anderson asked the best question all night. Why didn't you do this 4 years ago? Why haven't you been doing this? 10-minute answer, didn't answer the question. So what she did last night, I don't think helped her cause at all. I think people were looking for, you know, how are you going to, you heard the one woman, how are you going to make my life better? That wasn't provided. Donald Trump bad is not going to get you to the White House. I hate to break it to her.
That was CNN, not Fox News. That was their response to Kamala Harris's town hall performance. Again, Kamala Harris was debating herself. Donald Trump wasn't there. Was Kamala Harris set up to fail? Was Kamala Harris not ready to be president of the United States? And I bring up that question because of this. There is something happening with Donald Trump's campaign that I have never seen before. Now, Donald Trump, let's be real, he's been running since 2016, right? As much as Kamala Harris's campaign continues to say that Donald Trump is fascist, that is not resonating with voters. And this is why I continue to tell people that is not working. Okay. If it were working, this wouldn't be happening right here. New poll. Trump is getting record levels of support among young Black and Latino men. Record levels. Record levels. This is very interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Donald Trump has massively increased his support among groups that he previously performed poorly with in 2020. It underscores some of the challenges Kamala Harris had connecting with younger male voters, a demographic that typically breaks for Democrats, but in showing signs of shifting away from the party this election cycle. The Gen Forward survey, which, by the way, this does oversample younger people, just FYI. This ran September 26 to October 6, the University of Chicago, and included 2,359 eligible voters 18 to 40 years old. A quarter of young Black men are supporting Trump. Black men overall backed President Joe Biden nearly 9-1 in 2020. A quarter of Black men supporting Donald Trump. "44% of young Latino men said they'd back Trump, an improvement over the roughly 38% who backed him in 2020. So we see the gains there. For her part, Harris is at 58% with Black men, 37% with Latinos, 57% with Asian American and Pacific Islander men. Donald Trump, by the way, has jumped ahead of Kamala Harris with the Latino vote. I don't know if everybody saw that recently. And I think a lot of that has to do with the border. Kamala Harris is doing incredibly well among women of color, a majority of Black, 63%, Asian American and Pacific Islander, 60%, and Latina, 55% women say they will vote for Harris. White women are nearly evenly split between Harris, 44%, and Trump, 40%. And both of them have had town halls with Univision, right? So we need to have a deep discussion here, because this is something I point to this because this is not Jill Stein's fault. What is it about this particular administration that has turned off more young Black men and more young Latino men? And by the way, for the record, we know that the Democratic Party is going to get the Black vote. We all know this. So I'm not here to make it seem like majority of Black people are going over to Trump. That is not the case. But if Donald Trump is as bad as the Democratic Party has been telling you, why is these results turning out this way? If Donald Trump is as bad as Kamala Harris is telling you, why is he gaining more support between young Black and Latino men? Why has he jumped ahead of Kamala Harris for the Latino vote? Why? One of the number one issues that young men said when they were surveyed is the economy. And Kamala Harris campaign, and she's very good on this issue, the abortion issue. You know, she's trying to get a lot of women. She's been out there, campaigning to, young suburban women about a woman's right to choose, and rightfully so. But that doesn't always resonate with men. The economy is the number one issue. Number one issue. And we've seen this time and time again. It's the economy, stupid. Isn't that what they used to tell you? If Donald Trump is all these things, the fascists and all this stuff, and you can agree that he is, why is he performing well? Why are his polling numbers higher than before? Why is Donald Trump performing as well as he is? Why is this race as close as it is? Why has Kamala Harris blown a 5-point lead nationally against Donald Trump? I want to show you a couple of things. Even Nate Silver is calling it out as well. The border may tip the election to Trump. Now, this brings up Latino voters, right? One of the big concerns, people keep saying, oh, it's just those MAGA people that care about the border. No, not necessarily. What people still fail to realize, what the Democratic Party fails to realize, is that they tend to want to lump all Latino Americans in one group together. And that's not the case. They're kind of split down the middle when it comes to Democrat, Republican. So you don't have the majority of the Latino vote. You have to earn it. And there are a number of Latino Americans that are not happy with the migrant situation because they will say that they did it legally. They came in the legal way, and they don't think it's fair that now other people are coming in not the legal way. This is what they will tell you. But according to the Democrats, it's just white, racist MAGA people who believe that. This is what happens when you don't talk to the base. I want to show you this chart. Shout out to Nate Silver, because I want to show you where the struggle is happening. You see, this is what the Democratic Party, I don't know who is advising her, but I don't know how they could get this so wrong. The biggest issues that are a problem right now for Kamala Harris against Donald Trump is the economy plus inflation and immigration. Right now, Kamala Harris has this is negative 15.8% negative for economy and inflation. Immigration, negative 12.5%. I'm not making this up. These are the biggest ones. Even when you look at foreign policy, including the Middle East, there's nothing there. It says plus 0.0%. So even Gaza isn't the number one driving force. It's the economy. Now, this is important. When it comes to abortion, she takes the lead on that. I told you she's good on that issue. 12.5%. Democracy, plus 6.7%. Candidate character and personal attributes, plus 4.8%. However, this is killing her. The economy, inflation, immigration, this is killing her. And you know why it's killing her? Because she's a part of the current administration. She was in charge of the border. Now, these numbers could look a little bit different if the Democratic Party would have had an open primary, and let's say it was a Gavin Newsom who won. Or let's say it was Dean Phillips. He was another one that was running against Joe Biden. Let's say it was Gavin Newsom or Dean Phillips that had won. These numbers would probably look completely different because they're not a part of the current administration. I've said this from day one. I think this was a mistake to select someone, but to select someone a part of the current administration, because everything that happened with Biden, they're going to hold you responsible too. So Kamala's number one job was to prove to the voters how she was different from Joe Biden. She has not done that. She spent more time talking about Donald Trump being a fascist instead of explaining to you how she's different. She went on to The View and she told them she wouldn't do anything differently than what Joe Biden did. Big mistake, big mistake. And I would argue if Joe Biden were still in this race, his numbers would be bad as well. This is a common practice with Kamala Harris, where she starts off a campaign pretty high. And then as time goes by, she starts to tank. Don't believe me? It happened before. Back in 2020, let's get into this. Just a reminder, what happened to Kamala's campaign in 2020?
This is not the first time Kamala Harris has run for president. The last time, she didn't last very long. She didn't just come up short. Be hard-pressed to find someone to argue that her campaign wasn't a complete failure. So what happened? She suspended her campaign in December of 2019, not even making it to the Iowa caucuses or the New Hampshire primary, failing to earn even one delegate in her bid for the nomination. Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Michael Bloomberg, Pete Buttigieg, all got delegates.
She was the only one who didn't earn a single delegate. And this is who the Democratic Party selected to be the nominee against Donald Trump. Make it make sense, people.
Kamala Harris, 0. Then a senator from California, she did manage to make it to a very crowded debate stage in 2019, in which her most memorable moment may have been when she went on the attack against Joe Biden regarding his record on race.
It was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Biden and Harris would eventually team up, of course, but less than 6 months after that debate, Harris's campaign was over. It was a really promising campaign that seemed to go into a tailspin, capped off by a senior member of the campaign resigning, throwing a grenade on her way out. This is my third presidential campaign. I've never seen an organization treat its staff so poorly with less than 90 days until Iowa. We still don't have a plan to win. Questionable decision regarding the campaign was that Harris appointed her own sister as campaign chair. And while Maya Harris did have some experience serving as an advisor to Hillary Clinton, many said that she didn't work out because she was the candidate's sister. Other fingers pointed directly at Kamala Harris. This New York Times article entitled "How Kamala Harris's Campaign Unraveled" was published on November 29th, 2019. With just over 2 months until the Iowa caucuses, they said, her staff is now riven between competing factions, eager to belittle one another, and the candidate's relationship with the campaign managers turned frosty. Several aides have already had conversation about post-campaign jobs. 4 days after publication, she suspended her campaign. So what is it about a 2024 Kamala Harris ticket that will be so different this time? That's the real question. Back with me.
Yeah. So what you're starting to see, she has had this happen before. And I told you guys, I saw Kamala Harris speak. I saw Kamala Harris speak in person in 2020. And the line in New Hampshire was wrapped around and around. That was the longest line I'd ever seen for people waiting to get into that church to hear Kamala Harris speak when she was running for president. I had a goal during that time. I was going to try to go to every presidential candidate event in New Hampshire. That didn't really work out. But I saw Kamala Harris speak. So this isn't new to me. For people like, you never gave her a chance, yada, yada. I'm like, I'm trying to tell you, I saw in person all that energy that Kamala Harris had. And then I also saw it just, I saw it. So now we see it happening again. So she couldn't win the nomination last time. So this time they gave it to her. And that's another thing that people will constantly bring up. It was given to you. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that, right? She has a Pennsylvania problem. Donald Trump winning young Black men and young Latino men. Kamala's having a big Pennsylvania problem that Joe Biden didn't have. These are other things that I think Dem leadership didn't think about. How Kamala Harris is doing everything possible to lose pivotal Pennsylvania. We'll go into a couple of details here that I want to show you as well. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have a Pennsylvania problem. Harris, her team, and national Democrats finally know it, but does their knowledge come too late? So let's bring up some of the issues that happened with Pennsylvania. Okay. Harris and the national Democrats didn't realize that this may have been a necessary national strategy. It was a horrible Pennsylvania strategy. And that is the selecting of Tim Walz, her choosing Tim Walz, right? It says if you want to win the presidency, you need Pennsylvania, especially if you're a Democrat. So it goes on to say that they took Pennsylvania for granted. Joe Biden is from Scranton and loves to tell stories about his family's days there that helped him secure thousands of blue Democratic votes in an increasingly red northeastern Pennsylvania. Take away Biden and San Francisco Harris has little chance of keeping those voters. So this was the Pennsylvania problem. That's how it started. It's still an issue. But even in Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris was ahead of Donald Trump in the polls. Donald Trump is now pulled ahead of Kamala Harris in Pennsylvania. It goes on to bring up other issues as well. We'll scroll down here. It says, add to that, for 3 decades, voters in Philadelphia and the suburbs saw Biden as our third senator. He showed up at the Navy Yard, ball games, ribbon cuttings, you name it. In 2020, when the GOP told voters Biden had become a captive of the far left, that was a hard sell. In southeastern Pennsylvania, it was much easier one in 2024 with Harris at the top of the ticket. It goes on to say another misstep for Harris, choosing Tim Walz instead of Josh Shapiro. While Josh Shapiro isn't Biden, he is well known in greater Philadelphia and seems comfortable campaigning in Scranton. Now, Josh Shapiro, also a Zionist, and I believe the reason why she did not pick him was probably over the Israel-Gaza issue. I could be wrong, but if I were to make an assumption, that's probably it. Also, he could probably upstage her. He does seem to be, he likes the camera. So they bring that up here. The Israel issue could be part of the reason, right? Now, here's another thing. It says her message and her agenda and policies are not resonating here. They're not resonating here. She tried to stress that the economy is actually good. Bidenomics is working, she maintained. They tried charts, graphs, and experts. No one in Philadelphia's neighborhoods is buying it, especially Blacks and Hispanics who are being crushed by inflation and violent crime. So that goes back to Trump having a record increase with young Black men and young Latino men. And now he's pulled ahead in Pennsylvania. And we're going to play and have a little bit of fun. You guys want to have some fun? Let's look at a little bit of data with Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania early voting registration is already done, right? So their voter registration ended October 21st. So you can no longer register to vote in Pennsylvania. Let's look at some numbers compared to 2020. We are looking at what is called the Pennsylvania statewide 2024 early and absentee vote reports. Let me pick up here. Okay. Let's look at the numbers, fam. Bam. Numbers. In 2020, the Democratic Party, Joe Biden, received a little over 1.7 million early votes. Right now, in Pennsylvania, there's 690,000 early votes. Now, we do have to mention this. 2020 was the height of the pandemic. The numbers are going to be higher with the early voting and the mail-in and all that kind of stuff in 2020 because of the lockdowns. So we know that, which is why, according to Democrat strategists, they were trying to give themselves, I think it's a 550,000 vote buffer against the Republicans to adjust for that. So they're trying to stay 550,000 votes ahead of the Republican early vote. Does that make sense to everybody? Let me know. Okay, let's go back in. So when we adjust for that, if you look at the Republican, again, early votes, you'll see right now there's 338,000, a little over 338,000 early votes. And in 2020, over 621,000. Okay. If the Democrats' goal right now is to be at least 550,000 votes ahead of the Republicans, right now they're not there. Now, you still have a week to go. So we can always go back and track this. You still have a week to go of early voting. So keep that in mind. But they're not at that goal yet. There's another thing I want to point out. Notice the change. If you look at 2022, granted, it wasn't a presidential election, but for whatever reason, 2022, Republicans had over 262,000 early votes cast. Now, right now, they have over 338,000 early votes cast. If you look at the percentages, see the difference? Back in 2020, Republicans had 23.6%. 2022, they had 21.1%, but right now, 29.8%. So what it looks like right now, it seems that more Republicans in Pennsylvania are trying to vote early. That's what it seems like right now. Last time wasn't so much the case, right? They voted, they're still more likely to vote on election day. Now we need to look at demographics. This is where I notice a change. When I select demographics for Pennsylvania, and when I select race, and I just want to do a comparison again, we're focusing on Black and Latino because this is where Trump is making more gains. In 2020, you have over 232,000 Black votes from Pennsylvania. 2022, over 80,000. No presidential election, but they were voting for other races, right? 2024 right now, over 78,000 votes from Black voters right now for early voting in Pennsylvania. There's a ways to go. And again, we do have to keep in mind that during the pandemic, it was going to be higher because states were locked down. But I just want you to see what's at play here. Because in 2022, notice less people come out when there's not a presidential race. You notice this? Everybody see this? Yeah. Okay. Look at the Latino vote. 82,000 in 2020 for Biden, 25,000 in 2022, no presidential candidate, and 26,000 in 2024 right now for the early vote in Pennsylvania. So what I'm noticing, again, they still have a week to go. But based on what I'm seeing from the numbers right now, I'm going to check again next week to see if they get above that 550. They have to have that 550,000 buffer. So I'm going to check this again next week and see how that happened, if that happens. And if that happens, that's good news for Kamala Harris because that's what they're looking for. They're looking to have that buffer. If that does not happen, that's not good news for Kamala Harris because Donald Trump just pulled ahead of her in Pennsylvania. Now, start that question. I'll come back to it. There's also this. There's movement happening in the other swing states. It's not just Pennsylvania. And I got to point this out, people, because if we look at, this is Emerson, which is left leaning. So everybody's like, make sure you show one that's left leaning, not just right leaning. I'm looking at a left leaning poll, which is Emerson. Right now, Donald Trump is in the lead in Arizona, 49-47. In Georgia, he's in the lead, 49-48. So Georgia is close as well. In Michigan, they have it tied at 49%. I actually believe Donald Trump is ahead in Michigan. I really do, but they have it tied. And in Nevada, they have him at 47%, Kamala at 48%. And another poll I saw had him leading in Nevada. So, but this is a left-leaning poll. In North Carolina, he's at 49%. She's at 48%. And in Pennsylvania, you can see this is where he's taken the lead now. 49%, 48%. Wisconsin, they are now tied. Remember, when Kamala Harris first announced when she was running, that first couple of weeks, she was well ahead of him in the polls. What happened? Could it be the same thing that happened with her 2020 campaign? This is what I warn people about. When a candidate first announced, there's a lot of excitement around them in the beginning, but eventually as time goes on, it starts to lose that steam. It's the honeymoon period. So she is over that honeymoon period now. The Oracle says because the Democrats have spent too much time needlessly vilifying Trump and not telling the people how they are planning to respond to their needs. That's a good point. I mean, there's more. Because now, and this one is crazy, but it is what it is. I actually applaud this happening, whereas some people don't. There's another problem, and this is more so a problem for Kamala than Donald Trump. The Washington Post has announced today that they will not endorse a White House race for the first time since the 1980s. So the Washington Post is not endorsing a presidential candidate. Now, that actually doesn't hurt Donald Trump. That hurts Kamala Harris because the Democratic Party is arguing that she is the lesser evil and Donald Trump is a great danger. So for the Washington Post not to endorse her, it hurts her more. And they're not alone. They're not alone. By the way, people are really pissed about this on social media. People are tweeting that they're canceling their subscription to the Washington Post because they're not willing to endorse Kamala Harris. You mean it took them not endorsing a presidential candidate for you to cancel that subscription and not them lying for all these years? Okay, let's go to the LA Times. Here's another one. Now, this one's a little bit more forward. The Washington Post said they're going back to their roots. So they're not endorsing candidates. LA Times was a different story. There's a lot of controversy and confusion over the LA Times decision not to endorse a presidential candidate. I trust the editorial board's judgment. For me, genocide is the line in the sand. So everybody see this. Now, this woman here, I believe, is the daughter of the editor of the LA Times, I believe. The temptation is to speak in muffled tones about an issue the international courts have called a plausible genocide. But this moment requires opposition to crimes against humanity, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid, as my parents did in South Africa. Notice she has the Palestine flag here as well, the Sneaker Soon. For my family, apartheid is not a vague concept. My father was an emergency surgeon at Burwanth Hospital in Soweto. He treated students shot by the police during the Soweto uprisings, where 176 died protesting the brutal system of racial segregation. Apartheid was not just a political project. It was a profitable one, underpinned by lobbyists in Washington, U.S. defense contracts, and an international market for weapons, diamonds, and gold. Many U.S. news organizations and politicians were complicit. And she shares an example here of the New York Times, the official case for apartheid. So she's showing you how the New York Times was complicit with it. That was 1964. Apartheid, illegal settlements, and genocide in Palestine are profitable too, underpinned by U.S. arms dealers witnessing record profits. Northrop Grumman stock is up 28%, General Dynamics up 37%, Lockheed Martin up 55%. Dick Cheney is pleased. The goal for these profiteers is to distract and divide, to keep the weapons flowing. This is one reason even the most basic U.S. laws banning weapons sales to militaries that restrict humanitarian aid are being ignored. This is not a vote for Donald Trump. This is a refusal to endorse a candidate that is overseeing a war on children. I am proud of the LA Times decision, just as I am certain there is no such thing as children of darkness. There is no such thing as human animals. As Nelson Mandela said, the temptation is to speak in muffled tones about the rights of the people of Palestine. Having achieved our own freedom, we can fall into the trap of washing our hands of difficulties that others face. Yet, we would be less than human if we did so. LA Times won't endorse. And that brings up this question. If you haven't answered the poll, please answer that poll there. Thank you. Was Kamala Harris always destined to lose? We need to talk about it. Despite the hype, there is no way the vice president could have done all that was needed in the 100 days she had. We're going to talk about some of these things. I'm not going to read the entire thing right here. But Harris is not winning. The polls, despite all the money her team has raised, as much as over $1 billion over the past 3 months, and the hype that buoyed her early campaign, have remained stubbornly static in recent weeks. With Harris tied with or slightly trailing Donald Trump across swing states, in addition to Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, the other hotly contested states are Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, and North Carolina. The picture is worse. Even in the battleground races where she's ahead, such as in Nevada, most polls are so close that they are within the margin of error. More alarming for the Democrats is that historically, polls have undercounted Trump's support in key states. As election day nears, the realization that Harris could lose is spreading across her party, the media, and the electorate. One senses low-level panic among the Democrats, high in demand. How much does that come down on her campaign? I think that's the wrong question we should be asking. Did Harris ever really stand a chance of winning? And that's the question that I sort of want to ask you. Given the fact that Joe Biden waited too late, in my opinion, to drop out of this race because he didn't want to. Apparently, he's still bitter with Nancy Pelosi about that. He did not want to. He waited so late to drop out of the race. Then, on top of that, she still has to come up with the platform, has to campaign across the country in a short amount of time for something that Joe Biden had a whole year to, pretty much almost a whole year to do when he ran in 2020. Then there was the statement from Barack Obama early on where he wanted an open primary. He did not want someone selected, and he hesitated to endorse Kamala Harris until a little bit later. So I'm asking this question. Was Kamala Harris always destined to fail? And let's pretend her platform was different. Let's pretend she did support the arms embargo. Would she still lose? Would she still fail? And again, she could still win. She could. I think there are some Republicans that are going to support Kamala Harris. But it shouldn't even be this close, guys. That's the point I'm trying to get across. It should not be this close. If Trump is as bad as they're telling you that he is, why is this race this close? Why is Donald Trump gaining among Latino men and Black men? Why is Kamala Harris not ahead of Donald Trump with the Latino vote? Even Bernie had this. Why is Kamala Harris now this close in the national poll with Donald Trump when she was 5 points ahead of him? How is it she's only like 1 or 2 points ahead now? How is it that when we look at these other numbers, why is Kamala Harris behind with all the demographic groups that helped the Democratic Party win when you compare her to her predecessors like Biden, Hillary, and Obama? So the question that I'm asking you guys, was Kamala Harris always set to fail? I do not believe that Kamala Harris is a strong candidate. I believe she's a weak candidate. You could have put Michelle Obama in that spot, and Michelle Obama, I think, would have done a lot better. But there's something about her. That's my opinion. I want to hear what you guys think. So I'm going to grab this poll in just a second, but I also want to say this. I think that Kamala Harris is making a big mistake by running a Hillary Clinton style campaign. This is 2016 all over again. Instead of trying to solidify the base of the Democratic Party and listen to the demands and give in to serious demands like ending a genocide, Kamala Harris decided to add Liz Cheney to her campaign and try to recruit to moderate Republicans. This is something Hillary Clinton did in 2016. I never understood this. Choosing someone like Tim Kaine, who was against a woman's right to choice. I thought that was a big mistake for Hillary Clinton, Miss I'm pro-woman, pro-choice and all that jazz. But Kamala Harris decided to choose someone like Tim Walz. And Tim Walz is different from Tim Kaine, but Tim Walz is also, he wasn't that great on the debate stage against J.D. Vance. And I hate to say that because I do not like J.D. Vance, but he wasn't. Did she have enough time to pick a proper running mate? Does Kamala Harris want to be president? I'm not even sure she does. And that's another thing. Like Joe Biden said, I endorse you to be president. Does she want to be president? This campaign reeks of 2016. The Democratic Party, again, instead of running on core economic issues, minimum wage. She talks about housing and tax credits. Tax credits don't mean nothing if you don't meet these deductibles, boo. But it's core economic issues. The minimum wage, increase the minimum wage, these core things that people really care about. Why are you not running on this? Bernie Sanders really laid out the blueprint. There's no way any Democrat can screw this up. And he built a huge base of people. So she's not running on those core economic class issues. And it just is all over the place. Every time she has an interview, she spends more time doing word salad or talking about how dangerous Donald Trump is. People don't know you, boo. You have to tell people who you are. Besides, I grew up in a middle-class family. People knew who Joe Biden was. He didn't have to work as hard. He really didn't. He's from Pennsylvania. He was able to win it like that. And even though Biden won Pennsylvania, it was still close. Even though Biden won Georgia, it was still very close. So to me, it just seems like these Democrat strategists are overpaid and don't know what the hell they're doing. Everybody knows a Hillary Clinton style campaign is a disaster. And Kamala Harris going to Pennsylvania, why is Kamala Harris going to Philly and all that? Why are you not spending time in the rural areas of Pennsylvania? This is how Trump was able to win Pennsylvania in 2016. But I'm seeing you guys hanging out with Beyonce, Leonardo DiCaprio, Bruce Springsteen, Eminem, all these damn celebrities. You know why they doing that? Because they bringing all the celebrities together because she ain't got it. She don't have it. She weak. That's why they got to bring out Beyonce and all these people to dance and shake their booty for you to get you to want to vote for Kamala. Obama didn't have to do that.